In order to have a successful harvest season, you will need a drying shed, either in your yard or out in the field to properly dry the herbs you harvest. In this unit, we'll look at a simple but effective shed design you can build using very few materials. You will want somebody to help you out when it comes time to putting the shed together. First, you'll need an axe or a chainsaw to cut your poles, and to sharpen stakes for stability. You'll also need a good amount of rope to tie your poles together securely. Lastly, you'll need a tarp or series of tarps to keep the rain off of the herbs while they dry. In total, you'll need 55 various sized poles for this shed. We'll start with the ridge pole, which is the longest piece. For this demo, our ridge pole is about 20 feet long. Next are your rack poles, sidewall poles, and leg poles. For this demo, we used roughly 18-foot lengths for these poles. You'll need 20 of these. Next are the side shelf rack mounts. These are the 18-foot lengths cut into 3, so they come in around 6 feet in length. You'll need 8 of these. You'll also need 8 more of these 6-foot lengths, but these ones will be cut into stakes as shown. Next come the middle rack mounts. These are a bit longer than your shorter 6-foot lengths. You'll want these to be somewhere around 8 feet long. You'll need 4 of these in total. Next are the middle rack poles themselves. These are shorter than your side rack poles. You'll want these to be around 14 feet long. You'll need 8 of these in total. Finally, you'll need some racks for the back of the building. These are a bit longer than your 6-foot lengths. Make these ones about 10 feet long. You'll need 6 in total. Because we're using rope, you want the structure to be built as solidly as possible. To help this, every tie you make is going to have to be secured properly. This can be done with a locking knot, such as a Canadian jam knot. To make a Canadian jam knot, first tie a small knot at the end of your rope and tighten it. Then wrap your rope around the 2 pieces of wood to be tied, and make another knot using the same end of rope as your previous knot, creating a loop. Slide the other end of the rope through this loop and pull to tighten. The rope should then lock up, creating a secure tie. We'll post another video later for people who may not be clear on this knot. Once your poles are sized and cut, you can begin construction. You'll start with the end leg braces. These are made of 3 of the longer poles that you cut. Start by tying these poles together securely with your rope. You'll notice we're tying them together about 1.5 feet away from the edges of the poles, which will give us enough slack to lift and maneuver our braces. Make sure these ties are solid, wrapping each pole securely to the others with knots. Wrap each pole several times around if necessary. Next, you and your partner can begin to lift the stand up and pull the individual poles outwards so that the brace stands on its own. With your first leg brace now up, place one side of your ridge pole on top of the leg brace. You'll want something sturdy to stand on while you tie this ridge pole to the leg brace. Again, tie everything securely, wrapping the rope around each piece several times. With the ridge pole now securely tied to the first leg brace, you can begin putting up your second leg brace the same way as the first. Rest the other end of the ridge pole on top of this second brace, and adjust the height as you see fit. Bear in mind you can make further adjustments later. Then, securely tie the ridge pole to the second brace. With everything tied together, you can now adjust the legs of your braces so that the structure sits evenly. Next, we'll drive stakes to help make the shed solid. These stakes work both for securing shelf braces and wall braces. Drive your first stake about 3 or 4 feet away from the end of your inside poles. You'll want an axe to drive these stakes down, and you'll want your stakes to go on the inside of the structure. When the stake is in the ground a bit, you can begin tying it to the leg. Make sure these ties are secured well. When you're ready, you can use a smaller straight pole as a guide to drive your second stake in order to keep things straight. When you're ready, tie the second stake to the leg brace, and then move on to the next leg. Total, you'll drive and tie 8 stakes to the leg braces. To speed things up, one person can continue driving stakes while another does the tying. With your leg braces and stakes now fastened, we can begin work on the shelf braces. Have one person hold up the 6-foot length poles while the other fastens them to the stakes you just drove, tying to both vertical stakes. You'll need 2 shelf braces for each leg, so 8 in total. Make sure these braces are tied on to the inside of the stakes. We don't have specific measurements for these shelf braces, but try to keep everything even and straight. Once all of your shelf braces are in place, we can begin one of our wall pieces. Securely tie one of the longer poles to the top and outside of one of your outer stakes. Then move across and tie it to the top of the other outer stake. Check to make sure it's secure by pulling down on it. Once your first wall piece is up, you can begin installing your shelving racks. Place your longer poles on the inside of the outer stake on top of the shelf braces, working your way from the outside of the structure to the inside. You should have 6 of these racks in total, 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. Now, move to the other side of the structure and place your racks again, this time working from the inside of the structure to the outside. When these are in place, you can now place your other wall piece on the outside of the structure. With your side racks and side wall pieces now in place, you can put some shelf racks up on the back of the structure. It doesn't matter which end you use, just know that you won't be able to walk through this portion of the shed when completed. If the poles you cut are too short to reach both side racks, you can place your side rack poles on the outside of the shelf brace as shown here. Again, you'll want 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. Now we'll work on another set of shelf braces to be used along the middle of the structure. At the front of the structure, stand 2 of your shorter poles on the 2 leg braces in the front of the structure as shown, and tie them securely. Make sure these poles are standing straight up. Then, tie 2 of your 6-foot poles between them. Now you can rest one end of your long rack poles on this brace, and rest the other end on the back racks you had made earlier. Again, you'll want to make sure each of these rack poles is tied down securely wherever they sit. You should have enough room here to place 4 rack poles on the top and 4 at the bottom. Here's a photo of how your shed should look so far. You'll notice for this demo we didn't tie every rack pole down, but this will need to be done when it comes time to dry your herbs. Now you're ready for the final piece, the tarp. Before you pull the tarp over the structure, you'll want to tie longer pieces of rope around the whole tarp using the holes with metal rings. These will be tied all around your structure to keep the tarp down and to help pull the tarp over the structure. This is a delicate process because there will be a lot of sharp edges on the structure. Take your time here, as you don't want your tarp or tarps to rip. Start slowly pulling the tarp over one side of the structure. Then, when you're near the ridgepole, get someone to stand up on something sturdy and help run the tarp over the ridgepole. You'll probably want to use a longer stick to push the tarp over the ridgepole. Just be careful not to use too much force, as the stick may also rip the tarp. With the tarp sitting over the ridgepole, 2 people can start evenly distributing it to the front, back, and sides of the structure. Pull the tarp over the outside wall poles and continue stretching the tarp out evenly over the structure. When you're happy with the positioning, you can begin tying everything down. Keep in mind you'll probably want the pointy ends of your leg stands to be exposed, as they could rip the tarp during winds if the tarp is sitting over them. You'll want to climb between the racks to tie the sides of the tarp down. Tie the tarp to these racks from the inside, pulling the tarp as tight as possible, being careful not to rip the tarp. You'll want the tarp to be tight for two reasons. First, to lower the risk of ripping during high winds, and second, to prevent rain from pooling up on the tarp. And that's it. When your tarp is tied down securely, your shed is ready for drying herbs.